Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Podcast for Life. I'm David, and today we have a really important topic, one that I think almost every English learner has thought about at some point. The topic is why I learn English but can't speak.
Yes, hi, I'm Emma. And honestly, David, this is one of the most common struggles we hear from learners around the world. People study English for years, sometimes even decades. They pass exams, they can read books, they understand grammar, but when it comes to opening their mouth and actually speaking, suddenly it feels impossible.
Exactly. It's such a painful feeling because you've invested so much time and effort, but you can't use the language in the way you really want.
And that's the reason we decided to dedicate an entire episode, actually a long conversation, just to this topic. We want to break it down and explore, why does this happen? Why can people learn English for years, yet feel tongue-tied, frozen, or shy when it's time to speak?
And of course, we're not just going to talk about the problem. We'll also explore the hidden reasons, the psychology, the habits, and the practical changes that can help learners finally unlock their speaking ability.
So if you've ever thought, I understand English, but I can't speak it, this episode is for you.
Let's start with the picture we all know so well. Imagine this. You've been studying English for years in school. You know grammar rules. You can even explain the difference between the present perfect and the past simple. You can read articles, maybe even watch some English movies with subtitles. You've memorized vocabulary lists. And then one day, you meet a foreigner, or you're in an interview, or you're traveling, and someone says to you, "Hey, how are you?"
And suddenly your brain goes blank. Nothing comes out.
Exactly. You freeze. You know the words, you know the grammar, but in that moment, your tongue doesn't move.
And afterward, you feel terrible. You think, why can't I say even simple things? I studied so much. Maybe I'm just not talented in languages. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe English is just not for me.
Yes, and that negative cycle begins. You start avoiding speaking situations because they make you feel embarrassed. But the less you speak, the harder it becomes to improve.
That's the frustration, right? The feeling that you've worked so hard, but you can't enjoy the reward of communication.
And Emma, don't you think this is even worse in some countries? I mean, I've taught learners in Asia, Europe, South America, and in some places, people really emphasize grammar and exams, but they almost never practice real speaking.
Absolutely. For example, in Japan or South Korea, students spend thousands of hours in classrooms, memorizing grammar and vocabulary. They can get top scores on TOEIC or TOEFL, but when they meet a foreigner at the train station, they can't say much beyond hello.
Right. And in many European countries too, like Germany, Poland, or Spain, people study English for 10 years in school, yet many adults still feel nervous speaking to foreigners.
The frustration is universal, and I think that's the first important thing for listeners to understand. You are not alone. If you feel this way, it doesn't mean you're lazy or stupid. It means the system you used to learn English probably didn't focus on the right skills.
Yes, and I want to point out something else. Imagine you study cooking. You learn recipes, you watch videos, you know all the ingredients. But if you never actually go into the kitchen, you will never be able to cook. It's the same with English.
That's such a good analogy, and it feels unfair because learners think, I've put in the time. I've studied for years. Why isn't it working?
And the answer is because studying knowledge is not the same as building a skill. Speaking is a skill, like riding a bike, playing guitar, or swimming. You cannot learn it only by reading books. You need to practice it with your body, with your mouth, your voice, your ears.
And that's where many learners get stuck. They think English is just a subject like history or math, but actually, English is more like a sport or an art. You need to perform it, not just study it.
Yes, and the more you practice performing, the better you get. But the less you practice, the more afraid you become.
So the frustration is real, and it's not your fault. It's a result of the way English is usually taught, focusing too much on information and not enough on interaction.
So in this episode, we're going to dig deeper into the reasons behind this problem. Not just one reason, but several: psychological, cultural, educational, and practical.
And we'll share stories from learners we've taught to show you that this problem has solutions. People can overcome it.
And by the end, we want you to feel not only informed, but inspired. Because if others have done it, so can you.
Yes, so let's go on this journey together. All right, David, let's move into one of the most fascinating parts of this problem: the difference between reading English and speaking English.
Yes, this is huge. Many learners are really strong readers. They can read textbooks, websites, even novels in English. But when they try to speak, it's like hitting a brick wall.
Exactly. And learners often ask, why can I read but not speak? So let's answer that today.
The first thing is this: reading happens at your own pace. If you don't know a word, you can pause. You can check a dictionary. You can read the sentence again. You control the speed.
But speaking, no time to pause. It's instant. Someone asks you a question, and they expect a reply right now. Your brain doesn't have 30 seconds to think about grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Exactly. So what happens is, learners know the vocabulary in their head, but when they try to use it in real time, the processing speed isn't fast enough.
It's like typing. You might know every letter on the keyboard, but if you haven't practiced, you'll type very slowly, one key at a time. Reading is like looking at the keyboard. Speaking is like typing fast.
Great analogy. And just like typing, fluency comes only from repetition and practice, not just from knowing where the keys are.
I think we should explain another important concept here: the difference between passive and active knowledge.
Yes. So passive knowledge means you can recognize and understand something when you see it or hear it. Active knowledge means you can actually use it yourself, instantly.
For example, maybe you know the word overwhelming. If you see it in a book, you understand it. That's passive knowledge. But when your friend asks you, "How was your first day at work?" maybe you just say it was very big because you can't recall overwhelming quickly enough.
Exactly. You know it, but you can't produce it. And that gap between passive and active vocabulary is one of the biggest reasons learners can't speak fluently.
And what builds active knowledge? Not reading, not even writing, only speaking and listening practice.
Right. It's like music. You can read the sheet music of a piano song, but that doesn't mean you can play it. You have to practice on the instrument.
Now, let's talk about another reason for this gap. Many schools and teachers focus more on reading than speaking. Why?
I think one reason is that reading is easier to test. It's objective. You can give a student a text and ask them questions. It's easy to grade.
Yes, but speaking is harder to measure. If you have 40 students in a classroom, it's almost impossible to give everyone enough speaking time.
So schools naturally give more attention to reading and writing because it's easier to organize.
And after years of this, students become very good at reading, but they never develop speaking skills.
Exactly. And then later, when they need English in real life, they discover that their training prepared them for exams, not conversations.
You know, David, I once read something fascinating about how our brains process reading and speaking differently.
Oh yes, tell me.
So basically, reading activates the part of the brain that deals with recognition, like matching symbols to meaning. But speaking activates the part that deals with production, like planning, organizing, and moving muscles in your mouth.
That makes sense. So reading doesn't exercise the speaking part of the brain.
Exactly. Imagine you spend years watching people swim. You know all the moves, all the theory, but the first time you jump into the water, you panic because your body hasn't practiced.
Yes, and speaking English is exactly like swimming. You need to train your muscles, your tongue, lips, even your breathing, to move in new ways.
So when learners only read, their brain becomes good at recognizing English,
but not at producing it. That's the gap.
Maybe we should share a couple of real stories here.
Good idea. Do you remember Yuki from Japan?
Yes, she could read English novels. She even loved Harry Potter in English. But when she joined my speaking class, she could hardly introduce herself without long pauses.
Exactly. She told me she felt betrayed by her English education. She thought all those years of reading would prepare her to speak, but it didn't.
And after a few months of speaking practice, she was shocked at how quickly she improved. It wasn't that she didn't know English, she just hadn't trained the speaking muscle.
Another student I remember is Pedro from Brazil. He said, "When I read, I feel like a genius, but when I speak, I feel like a baby."
Oh yes, I remember that. And I told him that's normal. Reading and speaking are different skills. You're not a baby. You just haven't practiced this side of English yet.
So the big lesson for our listeners is this: reading and speaking are not the same skill. You can be strong in one and weak in the other.
And if your goal is to speak English, then reading alone will never get you there. You need active practice.
Yes, but the good news is, if you already have strong reading skills, you have a great foundation. You know vocabulary, you know grammar. You just need to transfer that knowledge into active speaking.
And we're going to talk more about how to do that later in this episode.
For now, just remember, don't feel frustrated if you can read well but can't speak. It's normal. It just means you haven't trained the speaking channel yet.
Okay, Emma, so far we've talked about the reading and speaking gap, but there's another layer to this problem, right?
Yes, and it's a big one. Even when learners can speak, they often don't because of cultural and psychological barriers.
Right. Things like fear, shyness, and perfectionism. These invisible barriers are just as powerful as lack of practice.
Let's start with the biggest one, the fear of making mistakes.
Yes, I can't tell you how many times students have said to me, "Teacher, I don't want to speak because I'm afraid of saying it wrong."
And I always ask them, do you expect a baby to speak perfectly the first time? Of course not. Babies make mistakes all the time. That's how they learn.
Exactly. But many adult learners are afraid of being judged. They think people will laugh at them or think they're stupid.
And sometimes, unfortunately, they do have negative experiences. Maybe a teacher corrected them harshly in school, or maybe a friend made a joke about their accent. Those little experiences can create big scars.
Yes, I once had a student from Mexico who told me that in school, every time she made a mistake, the class laughed. So for years, she avoided speaking altogether.
That's heartbreaking, and it shows how fear can block progress. Because the truth is, mistakes are necessary. Without mistakes, you cannot grow.
Another barrier is shyness. Some people are naturally quiet, even in their own language. So when they switch to English, they become even more reserved.
Yes, and it's interesting, I've noticed that shy students often know a lot of English. They're smart, they've studied hard, but they rarely give themselves the chance to use it.
I remember one student, Li Wei from China. In class, he almost never spoke, but once I saw his notebook, full of advanced vocabulary, grammar notes, and even translations of English songs. He knew so much, but he was too shy to open his mouth.
Yes, and when I finally asked him why, he said, "I don't want people to look at me when I speak." That's shyness, not lack of knowledge.
And the sad thing is, shyness creates a cycle. The less you speak, the less confident you become. The less confident you are, the more shy you feel.
Exactly. It's like a loop, and the only way out is to break the loop by speaking, even just a little. Now, let's talk about perfectionism. This is something I think many learners suffer from, especially high achievers.
Yes, perfectionists want every sentence to be correct before they speak. They pause, they hesitate, they overthink. And by the time they're ready, the conversation has already moved on.
Exactly. I had a student from Germany once who would stop mid-sentence and say,
Wait, I need to check the grammar in my head. And by the time she finished, the listener was gone.
And the irony is, native speakers don't speak perfectly either. We make grammar mistakes, we use fillers like like. Perfection isn't natural conversation.
Yes, real communication is messy, fast, and imperfect. The goal is not perfection, it's connection.
And sometimes, perfectionism comes from pride. People don't want others to see them make mistakes. But as we said, mistakes are part of the learning process.
Now, let's explore the cultural side. In some cultures, speaking up is not encouraged.
That's true. For example, in some Asian cultures, students are taught to listen quietly and respect the teacher. Speaking out in class can be seen as rude or showing off.
Yes. So when those students learn English, they bring that cultural habit with them. They feel uncomfortable speaking in front of others, even though that's exactly what they need to do.
Another example is accents. In some countries, people laugh at their own countrymen who speak English with a local accent. So learners feel ashamed to even try.
That's so sad, because accent is not a mistake. It's natural. Everyone has an accent, even native speakers.
Exactly. And instead of being ashamed, learners should see their accent as part of their identity.
So listeners, here's the key idea. Often, the reason you don't speak is not because you can't, but because you're afraid, shy, or perfectionist.
Yes, and these barriers are real, but they are not permanent. You can overcome them with the right mindset and environment.
Step 1 is simply to recognize them. Ask yourself, am I quiet because I don't know the words? Or am I quiet because I'm afraid of being wrong? That awareness is powerful.
And once you realize it, you can start taking small steps to break the fear. For example, speaking with supportive friends, or practicing with yourself at home.
Exactly. Little by little, your confidence grows. And as confidence grows, fear shrinks.
All right, Emma. We've talked about fear, shyness, and perfectionism. I think this naturally brings us to the next big topic, confidence.
Yes, confidence is the secret ingredient in speaking English. You might know all the grammar, you might have a huge vocabulary, but if you don't have confidence, the words never come out.
And here's the interesting thing. Confidence is not about how much English you know, it's about how comfortable you feel using what you already know.
Exactly. I've seen learners with advanced English who are terrified to speak, and I've seen learners with simple English, maybe just a few hundred words, who speak happily and communicate well.
Yes, and guess who improves faster?
The confident ones.
Right, because they're not afraid to practice. They're not waiting for perfection. They use what they know, and each time, they grow a little more.
So confidence is like fuel. Without it, your car, your English, doesn't move, no matter how big the engine is.
So where does confidence come from?
I'd say 3 main things: experience, mindset, and environment.
Let's break that down.
First, experience. The more you speak, the more natural it feels. At first, your heart races, your palms sweat, you worry about mistakes. But after you do it many times, your brain realizes, oh, this is safe. I can survive this.
Yes, it's like driving. The first time, you're nervous. After 100 times, it's automatic.
Second, mindset. Confidence comes from believing that mistakes are normal, not shameful. If you see mistakes as progress, you feel free to speak.
And third, environment. If you're in a supportive group where people encourage you, confidence grows quickly. But if you're in a critical environment, confidence disappears.
Exactly. I always tell my students, choose your speaking partners wisely. Speak with people who lift you up, not those who bring you down.
You know what really hurts confidence? This belief. I need to be fluent before I start speaking.
Yes, that's one of the biggest myths in language learning. People wait and wait, thinking, one day when I'm ready, I'll speak. But that day never comes.
Because fluency doesn't come before speaking. Fluency comes from speaking.
Exactly. If you wait until you're perfect, you'll wait forever.
I sometimes compare it to dancing. Imagine someone says, I'll join the dance floor once I'm a perfect dancer. Well, you'll never be perfect until you actually dance.
Yes, and the same with English. You learn by doing. So, how can learners actually build confidence?
I'd say start with small wins. Don't aim for long, perfect conversations. Just try short, simple interactions.
Like saying good morning to a colleague or ordering coffee in English.
Exactly. Each time you succeed, even with something small, your brain stores that as evidence. I can do this.
And the more small wins you collect, the stronger your confidence becomes.
It's like a snowball. Small at first, but it grows bigger as it rolls.
So, listeners, here's the key. Confidence is not magic. It's built step by step through small actions, positive mindset, and supportive environments.
And remember, confidence is often more important than knowledge. You don't need thousands of words to start speaking. You just need the courage to use the words you already know.
Yes, and once you start, confidence grows. And as confidence grows, fluency follows.
So don't wait for perfection. Start now. Say something, even if it's simple. That's how the journey begins.
Exactly. Speaking without fear of mistakes is the door to real communication. And once you open that door, English becomes alive.
So, Emma, we've talked about confidence, but there's another key part of speaking that learners often forget: listening.
Yes, most people think speaking is about output only, what you say. But in reality, speaking is also about input, what you hear.
Exactly. Because if you can't understand how English sounds, it's very hard to produce it yourself.
That's why good listening is the foundation of good speaking.
Think about babies. Before they say their first word, they spend months, even years, just listening. They absorb rhythm, tone, pronunciation.
Right. And when they finally speak, they don't start with perfect grammar. They start with sounds they've heard again and again.
So if you want to speak English naturally, you need to listen a lot, not just read.
Yes, and not just listen to classroom audio, but to real English. Movies, podcasts, conversations, songs.
And here's the important part. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Listening is about training your ear to the music of English.
I love that, the music of English. Now, let's be honest, David. Many learners think, I study in class, I use an app. Isn't that enough?
Yes, and the truth is, no, it's not.
Why not?
Because most classrooms are too big. The teacher talks, students listen. Maybe each student gets 2 minutes to speak in a 1-hour lesson. That's not real practice.
And apps? They're useful for vocabulary, grammar, even listening, but they don't give you real human interaction.
Exactly. Speaking is a social activity. You need a partner, a real person, a real exchange.
So, classrooms and apps can help, but they can't replace conversation.
Right. If you want to speak, you need speaking time. There's no shortcut. So let's talk about mindset. What changes in thinking can help learners unlock speaking?
First, stop chasing perfection. Aim for communication, not correctness.
Yes. Second, see mistakes as teachers. Every mistake is feedback.
Third, measure progress by confidence, not by grammar points. Ask yourself, do I feel more comfortable speaking than last month?
Fourth, remember, you don't need advanced words to be fluent. Simple English spoken smoothly is powerful.
And finally, treat English as a tool for life, not just a subject in school. Use it daily, like brushing your teeth. Okay, let's give listeners some concrete strategies.
Yes, practical ideas they can use today.
Number 1, self-talk. Talk to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing, your plans, your feelings.
Number 2, shadowing. Listen to a short audio, then repeat it exactly. Copy rhythm, tone, pronunciation.
Number 3, voice notes. Record yourself speaking every day. Over time, you'll hear your progress.
Number 4, conversation partners. Even 10 minutes a day with a partner is gold. Online or offline doesn't matter.
Number 5, think in English. Don't translate in your head. Practice forming thoughts directly in English.
And number 6, small goals. For example, this week I will order coffee in English. Celebrate when you succeed.
These strategies may sound simple, but if you practice them regularly, they transform your speaking.
So Emma, let's wrap up. We've covered a lot today.
Yes, we explored why learners study English but still can't speak, the reading versus speaking gap, cultural and psychological barriers, lack of confidence, and not enough real practice.
And we learned that speaking is a skill, not just knowledge. You need confidence, listening practice, and real interaction.
And most importantly, you are not alone. Millions of learners feel the same, and millions have overcome it.
So can you.
Remember, English is not about being perfect. It's about connecting with people, sharing ideas, living more fully.
And every time you open your mouth and speak, even with mistakes, you are succeeding.
Yes, you're not failing. You're learning.
So our message to you, dear listener, is simple. Speak today. Don't wait. Use the English you have now. Step by step, your confidence will grow and fluency will follow.
We believe in you.
Thank you for joining us on English Podcast for Life.
Until next time, keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in yourself.
Bye for now.